about it, correct.
Okay. And what feedback did he give you?
He initially told me that the aircraft that was acquired, the Mil Air, was too small and there wasn't enough room.
Had you ever had any discussions with Mr. Morrison about concerns that he or Dr. Hill had with your judgment?
Did I ever have any conversations with Mr. Morrison about it? No.
Okay. Did Mr. Morrison ever express concerns to you that he thought maybe you weren't following the chain of command in all instances?
He did not.
And did Dr. Hill or Mr. Morrison ever ask you questions about whether you were trying to access information outside of your lane?
They did not.
And another, aspect of the Ukraine portfolio that you were not a part of were some of the communications Mr. Morrison was having with Ambassador Taylor?
Correct.
And did you ever express concern that he was leaving you off those calls?
Well, certainly it was concerning. He had just come on board. He didn't have the, he wasn't steeped in all the items that we were working on, including the policy that we developed over the preceding months. And I thought I could contribute to that, to his, to the performance of his duties.
Okay. When you went to Ukraine for the inauguration?
Correct.
20th. At any point during that trip, did Mr. Daniluk offer you a position of defense minister with the Ukrainian government?
He did.
And how many times did he do that?
I believe it was 3 times.
And do you have any reason why he asked you to do that?
I don't know, but every single time I dismissed it. Upon returning, I notified my chain of command and the appropriate counterintelligence folks about the offer.
I mean, Ukraine's a country that's experienced a war with Russia. Certainly their Minister of Defense is a pretty key position for the Ukrainians. President Zelensky, Mr. Daniluk, to bestow that honor on you, at least asking you. I mean, that was a big honor, correct?
I think it would be a great honor, and frankly, I'm aware of service members that have left service to help nurture the developing democracies in that part of the world, certainly in the Baltics. Former officers, and if I recall correctly, it was an Air Force officer that became Minister of Defense. But I'm an American. I came here when I was a toddler, and I immediately dismissed these offers, did not entertain them.
When he made this offer to you initially, did you leave the door open? Was there a reason that he had to come back and ask a second and third time, or was he just trying to convince you?
Yeah, Counsel, you know what? It's the whole notion is rather comical that I was being asked to consider whether I'd want to be the Minister of Defense. I did not leave the door open at all.
Okay.
But it is pretty funny for a Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Army, which really is not that senior, to be offered that illustrious a position.
When he made this offer to you, was he speaking in English or Ukrainian?
Oh, Mr. Daniluk is a absolutely flawless English speaker who's speaking in English.
Okay.
And just to be clear, there were 2 other staff officers, Embassy Kiev staff officers, that were sitting next to me when this offer was made.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who were they?
So one of them you may have met. It was Mr. David Holmes, and the other one was I don't know. I mean, I guess I could. It's another Foreign Service officer, Keith Bean.
Okay. Yeah, we met Mr. Holmes last Friday evening.
I understand. Yeah. He's a delightful fellow.
And you said when you returned to the United States, you papered it up, given your with SCI clearance. Whenever a foreign government makes a overture like that, you paper it up and you tell your chain of command.
I did, but I also don't know if I fully entertained it as a legitimate offer. I was just making sure that I did the right thing in terms of reporting. Yes.
Okay. And did any of your supervisors, Dr. Hill at the time, or Dr. Kupperman or Ambassador Bolton ever follow up with you about that? It's rather significant.
Yeah.
The Ukrainians offered you the post of defense minister. Did you tell anyone in your chain of command about it?
After I spoke to, and I believe it, the deputy, our deputy senior director, John Areth, was there. I spoke. Once I mentioned it to both of them, I don't believe there was ever a follow-up discussion.
Okay. So it never came up with Dr. Kupperman or Dr. Hill?
Following that conversation I had with Dr. Hill, I don't believe there was a subsequent conversation, and I don't recall ever having a conversation with Dr. Kupperman about it.
Okay. And did you brief Director Morrison when he came on board?
No, I completely forgot about it.
Okay. And subsequent to the May trip, did Mr. Danny Luke ever ask you to reconsider? Were there any other offers?
No.
When he visited for the July 10th meeting with Ambassador Bolton, did it come up again?
It never came up again.
Okay. And did you ever think that possibly if this information was, got out, that it might create at least the perception of a conflict, that the Ukrainians thought so highly of you to offer you the defense ministry post? On one hand, but on the other hand, you're responsible for Ukrainian policy at the National Security Council.
So, frankly, it's more important about what my American leadership, American chain of command thinks than any of the. And this is. These are honorable people. I'm not sure if he meant it as a joke or not, but it's much more important what my civilian White House National Security Council chain of command thinks more so than anybody else. And frankly, if they were concerned about me being able to continue my duties,
of course,
they would have brought that to my attention. Dr. Hill stayed on for several more months, and we could continue to work to advance U.S. policy.
Okay. And during the times relevant of the committee's investigation, did you have any communications with Mr. Yarmouk or Danny Luke outside of the July 10th meeting?
I recall a courtesy note from Mr. Yarmouk within days of his return to July, in which he wanted to preserve an open channel communication, and I said, please feel free to contact me with any concerns.
And were you following this? There's sort of two tracks. Ambassador Taylor walked us through it during his testimony last Wednesday. He called it a regular channel, and then he called it an irregular but not outlandish channel with Ambassador Sondland and Ambassador Volker. Were you tracking the Sondland and Volker channel during this time period? Yeah,
so I'm trying to recall at which point I became aware of Ambassador. Certainly I was aware of the fact that they were working together. Ambassador Sondland, Ambassador Volker, and Secretary Perry were working together to advance U.S. policy interests that were in support of what had been agreed to. But I didn't really learn, like I said, until the July 10th. Actually, there may have been a slightly earlier point. I recall a meeting in which Ambassador Bolton facilitated a meeting between Ambassador Volker and Ambassador Bolton in the June timeframe. And there may have been some discussion about this external channel, but
okay.
I frankly didn't become aware of these particular U.S. government officials being involved in this alternate track until July 10th.
Okay, and I think we had some discussion that Mr. Giuliani was promoting a negative narrative about the Ukraine, and certain officials were trying to help the president understand that with Zelensky, it was a new day, and Ukraine's going to be different. Is that your understanding?
That is correct. That is exactly what was being reported by the intelligence community, by the policy channels within the NSC, and the conservative voices of the various people that have actually met with him, including foreign officials.
And to the extent that you're aware of what Ambassador Sondland's goals were here and Ambassador Volker's goals were here, you think they were just trying to do the best they could and try to advocate in the best interest of the United States?
That is what I believed, and that is what I still believe, frankly.
And so to the extent Mr. Giuliani may have had differing views, they were trying to help him understand that it was time to change those views?
I think they were trying to bring him into the tent and have him kind of support the direction that we had settled on.
And you never conferred with Mr. Giuliani?
No.
You never had any meetings, phone calls, or anything of that sort?
I did not.
And did you have any?
I only know him as New York's finest mayor.
America's mayor.
America's mayor.
And did you have any discussions, communications during this relevant time period with the president?
I've never had any contact with the president of the United States.
My time's expired, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to now move to the 5-minute member rounds. Are you good to go forward, or do you need a break?
I think we'll elect to take a short break.
Okay, let's try to take a 5 or 10 minute break, and we will resume with the 5-minute rounds. If I could ask the audience and members to please allow the witnesses to leave the room first.
All right, so that was the opening portion of the Impeachment Inquiry Hearings, and we will end this live Truman's Town Hall broadcast. You can catch the rest of it on our Facebook page at Truman's Town Hall Podcast on Facebook, and we'll post the video of the hearing. Thanks for listening. Hope you all have a good day.
Thank you for listening to Truman's Town Hall. Share this podcast with your friends and neighbors and subscribe today.